Little Tommy stood on the cracked sidewalk outside the old diner, where the chrome on the motorcycles gleamed under the late afternoon sun. He was 8 years old with tousled brown hair and eyes that had seen too much for such a small face. His small hands clutched the edge of a leather jacket belonging to Big Jim. The leader of the local riders, Tommy's voice trembled as he looked up at the circle of weathered men. "Please," he whispered. "My stepdad hurts my mom. He hurts me. I don't know what else to do. Can you make him stop?" The words hung in the warm air like dust motes in a sunbeam. Big Jim knelt down slowly, his knees creaking the way old porch swings do after a long winter. He placed a large, calloused hand gently on Tommy's shoulder. "Son," he said softly, "we don't hurt people, but we sure can help." Tommy's eyes filled with tears that spilled over like a quiet summer rain. He had expected anger, maybe even fear. Instead, he felt the warmth of understanding. The other bikers stood quietly, around them their engines cooling with soft ticks. There was Harold with his gray beard and kind eyes, and Walter, who always carried butterscotch candies in his vest pocket, and Ernest, whose laugh could fill a room like sunlight through lace curtains. They had all raised children. They remembered the weight of protecting the small and vulnerable. Big Jim looked at his friends and nodded. "Let's take a ride," he said. "But first, let's get this boy something to eat." They walked into the diner where the smell of coffee and apple pie wrapped around them like a favorite quilt. The waitress, Mabel, had known these men for years. She poured milk for Tommy without being asked and slid a plate of warm cookies toward him. "Eat slow," she said with a smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. Growing boys need strength. Tommy sat between Big Jim and Harold. The men spoke in low voices about ordinary things, about the fishing hole that used to be behind the old mill, about how gasoline smelled different when they were young, about the way their own fathers had taught them to change a tire, with nothing but determination and a lug wrench. Tommy listened. The stories felt like lullabies made of memory. He began to relax his small shoulders, dropping as the fear eased away when the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in rose and gold. Big Jim paid the bill and left Mabel a tip that made her eyes shine. "Come on, Tommy," he said. "Time to go home." But not alone. The motorcycles rumbled to life like distant thunder that promised rain instead of storm. Tommy rode in front of Big Jim, his small hands gripping the warm tank. The wind carried the scent of pine and freedom. They rolled slowly through streets lined with maple trees that had stood for generations, past the baseball field where these same men had played as boys, past the church with the steeple that had rung for weddings and farewells. Tommy's house came into view, small place with peeling paint and curtains that needed washing. The stepdad, Ray, stood on the porch smoking a cigarette, his face hard as winter ground. He watched the line of motorcycles pull up with narrowed eyes. Big Jim cut his engine first. The others followed until silence settled like evening dew. Ray dropped his cigarette and crushed it. "Under his boot, what's this?" he demanded. Big Jim dismounted slowly and helped Tommy down. The boy stayed close, his hand finding Harold's large one. "We're here to talk Rayman to man." Ray's jaw tightened. "This ain't your business." "Everything that hurts a child is our business." Harold spoke gently but firm, like a father correcting a wayward son. Walter stepped forward and offered Ray a butterscotch candy from his pocket. Ray stared at it as if it were something foreign. Ernest leaned against his bike, arms crossed but not threatening. "We were all young once," he said, "made mistakes, some bigger than others. But there's always a chance to choose different." Tommy's mother, Ellen, appeared in the doorway. Her eye was bruised, but her chin lifted when she saw the circle of protectors. She walked down the steps, her apron still dusted with flour from making supper. "Ray," she said quietly, "these men came because our boy asked for help, the same way I should have." Ray looked from face to face, men he had seen around town but never really known, men who fixed widows' roofs without being asked, who left quarters in parking meters that were about to expire, who brought casseroles when someone passed. His shoulders began to sag like snow sliding from a warm roof. "Don't know how to stop," he muttered. Big Jim placed a hand on Ray's arm. "Then let us show you." They all went inside. The living room smelled of coffee and yesterday's onions. Ellen made fresh pot while the men sat on chairs that had held generations. Tommy curled up on the couch between Harold and Walter, his eyes heavy but peaceful. They talked for hours, not with shouting or threats, but with stories. Harold told about losing his temper years ago and how his wife made him sleep in the garage until he learned to speak kindly. Walter remembered his own stepfather who taught him that real men protect, not destroy. Ernest spoke of prison, and the day he decided the cycle ended with him. Ray listened. Really listened. His hands shook as he held the coffee cup Ellen placed before him. When the moon rose high and silver Big Jim stood, Ray, he said, "Tomorrow you start fresh. We'll be by at 7 to pick you up. There's a house needs painting on Maple Street. The widow Johnson can't afford to hire anyone. You'll work with us, and we'll talk every day until you don't need us anymore." Ray nodded slowly. "I don't deserve this," he whispered. "None of us did at first," Harold answered. "But kindness isn't about deserving. It's about giving someone a chance to become better." Ellen touched Ray's hand. "For Tommy," she said, "for all of us." The bikers left as quietly as they came, their taillights glowing like fireflies in the dark. Tommy watched from the window, his small hand raised in goodbye. The next morning they returned. Ray wore an old shirt and jeans that had seen better days, but his eyes held something new. Hope, maybe. They worked side by side, painting the widow Johnson's house a soft butter yellow. She brought them lemonade and told stories about her husband who had ridden with these same men decades ago. Ray's hands blistered, but he didn't complain. At lunch, they sat under the oak tree and shared sandwiches. Tommy came after school with his mother. He brought drawings he had made in class. One showed motorcycles circling a house like guardian angels. Big Jim pinned it to the dashboard of his bike. Every day became a rhythm: work in the morning, talk in the afternoon, supper with Ellen and Tommy in the evening. Ray learned to make meatloaf the way Tommy liked it, with extra onions and a brown sugar glaze. He learned to read bedtime stories with different voices for each character. He learned that apologies spoken sincerely could heal wounds deeper than any fist. The bikers became uncles. Harold taught Tommy to fish with a cane pole and patience. Walter showed him how to change oil and check tire pressure. Ernest brought old baseball cards and told stories about players from the 50s. Big Jim taught Ray to ride, not for escape, but for the feeling of wind carrying away. Old anger months passed like pages in a well-loved book. The house got fresh paint inside and out. Ellen's bruises faded and laughter returned to her voice. Tommy grew taller and smiled without looking over his shoulder. One Saturday evening they all gathered in the backyard. String lights twinkled above the picnic table. Ellen had made her mother's recipe for fried chicken. The bikers brought potato salad and peach cobbler. Ray stood up, his voice steady. "I was lost," he said. "Thought hurting was the only power I had. These men showed me different. Showed me that real strength is carrying someone else's burden until they can walk again." He looked at Tommy. "I'm sorry, son. Every day for the rest of my life I'll try to earn back your trust." Tommy ran to him, arms wide. Ray caught him and held on as if letting go might break the spell. The men raised their glasses of sweet tea. To second chances, Harold toasted. To the kind of love that doesn't keep score. Years later, when Tommy was grown, he rode his own motorcycle, a gift from Big Jim on his 18th birthday. He wore a leather jacket with patches earned through service, fixing bikes for single mothers, delivering meals to shut-ins, teaching boys how to be men without using their fists. Ray rode beside him, gray at the temples but strong in the ways that matter. Ellen waved from the porch where roses now climbed the trellis. The old bikers still gathered. Though Harold needed a cane now, and Walter's hands shook when he poured coffee, they told the story to new generations. About the little boy who asked for help, and the men who answered with kindness instead of violence. About how one moment of courage can ripple through decades. On quiet evenings, they sat on the same porch, watching fireflies dance. Tommy would rest his head on Ray's shoulder, the way he did when he was 8. Only now Ray's arms were the safest place in the world. The motorcycles rested in the driveway, chrome dulled by time, but hearts polished bright. They had learned, together, that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's chosen, one act of gentleness at a time, and kindness given freely and received humbly is the strongest force on earth. It doesn't make headlines, doesn't roar like engines, but it changes everything, one healed heart at a time. The stars came out one by one like memories lighting the sky, and in the quiet, they all felt the same truth. We are never too old to change, never too broken to mend, never too far gone for love to find us. All we need is someone willing to stop to listen, to offer a hand instead of a fist and the courage to take it. The night wrapped around them gentle as a prayer, crickets sang their ancient songs, and somewhere in the distance, a motorcycle engine turned over. Not in anger, but in promise, carrying the message forward that kindness, like these old friends, never truly grows old, it simply becomes part of who we are forever.